Hey folks, your OS Reviews. You're watching our video unboxing and first impressions look at the Xiaomi Mi Note 2. This phone isn't completely new to the market. In fact, the Note 3 has been recently launched. However, there are still many reasons why you would want to pick up the Note 2. For one, the price is now significantly lower, and you can find it in the links down below, sometimes as low as around $250, which is extremely cheap for what is essentially a flagship level device. Also, the Note 2, in my opinion, has a stronger, more eye-catching design than the Note 3 because it has a curved or a flexible 5.7-inch OLED display that curves off at the left and the right in the same fashion as the Samsung Note 7. This is compared to the current Xiaomi Mi Note 3, which has a very flat and traditional look. So in my opinion, this one still looks much more expensive. Furthermore, specifications are still very strong. You have access to a Snapdragon 821 processor clocked at 2.35 GHz and a 22.5 megapixel camera, which has electronic image stabilization and 4K video recording. It also features a very large 4070 milliamp hour capacity battery, which is larger than the current Mi Note 3. It also supports Qualcomm's Quick Charge 3.0, uses USB Type-C, has NFC, there's Wi-Fi, there's Bluetooth, there's GPS, so it's again a very fully featured and flagship level device even now, but at a fraction of the cost, which is great. So on the back you have some very basic information. It supports 4G LTE bands in select countries. Otherwise, it does have an accelerometer, there's a compass, there's a gyroscope, ambient light sensor, all the standard tools that we see in flagship level phones. Opening up the packaging, it's very standard. It looks similar to any other Xiaomi phone, and we'll do a quick comparison between this and the Redmi 4X in a second. But first, underneath the box here, there's access to a hardshell carrying case, which you can see that is a bonus kind of hard case that you can snap on to protect the phone. And because it is transparent, you can still see the design on the back, which again is made out of glass. The Mi Note 2, I will also point out, is a phone that came out about the same time as the original Xiaomi Mi Mix, which is the first kind of really commercial bezel-less phone, or first phablet with a bezel-less design. And whereas that is really a concept device, the Mi Note 2 is really a true flagship that they were trying to sell and distribute through more channels, and there was more stock available. So this is the SIM card ejector tool with a quick start guide. Underneath here we have access to a USB Type-C cable for charging and data syncing. Since it does use Qualcomm's Quick Charge, it should be fully charged in under 2 hours despite the large battery capacity, and there's also a Xiaomi USB-based charger. And that's it, so very simple packaging. Alright, so taking a look at the design of the phone next, it is a very gorgeous device, again because it has a glass front and a glass back. Not only that, but just like the Samsung Galaxy Note 7, it has curved edges on the left, right, and also of course on the front, where the display is physically curving off. So it's a flexible panel just like on the LG G Flex, which is great in terms of durability. Essentially, if you remove the screen from the phone, you can bend and warp it and it still won't break. Otherwise, again, all these curves, it means that it gives you some extra ergonomics. The phone seems a lot slimmer on the edges, so when you're holding it, it feels more comfortable. Otherwise, at 5.7 inches, it's not exactly a small device. It's definitely a phablet, which gives you extra room for watching media and browsing the web, but at the same time, it's going to be a little bit larger. The phone does have a physical fingerprint scanner on the bottom here that also acts as a key that you can press down to go back home, or just tap on to access some quick shortcuts. The rim of the phone is made out of aluminum, as you would expect on a flagship, and the feel in the hand is fairly substantial. There's access to your speaker, USB Type-C, there's a few antenna bands. The side here has a very slim kind of aluminum trim between the glass, where you have a power key, a volume rocker, all made out of aluminum. The top still retains the IR blaster feature and a standard 3.5mm headphone port. So this is great because you have the benefits of a regular headphone port and USB Type-C for charging, which is rare to find these days. On the back, there's the aforementioned camera, dual-tone LED flash, and a bit of branding from Xiaomi. So let's remove some of these stickers now. This is a very glossy phone, as you would expect, since it's made out of Corning Gorilla Glass. It feels, again, very substantial, but attracts fingerprints quite easily. And then of course in the front, there's also the earpiece, proximity light sensors, and in addition to the front-facing camera. Let's see if there's any juice, and we'll do an initial boot on the phone. While it's booting up, let's do a quick size comparison between this and the Xiaomi Redmi 4X, which is essentially their budget end device in 2017. The Redmi 4X has a 5.5-inch display compared to the, again, 5.7-inch display on the Note 2, and it has a 720p resolution compared to a full 1080p res. Otherwise, the phone itself, you can see, has pretty similar in terms of design language, but the Redmi series are typically made out of aluminum or plastic, whereas, again, the Note is made completely out of aluminum and glass. So it definitely feels a bit more premium, but has shared kind of design elements. It's running on Mi 8, it seems like, so there is MIUI on top of Android in terms of customization. Let's see if we can scroll all the way down. Of course, the screen seems very sensitive. Snapdragon 821 is still a very powerful processor, definitely a flagship level processor, and that means if you're playing back games, multitasking, everything should run very smoothly. As we continue through the setup process, I want to mention that there are two versions of the Note 2 available. There is a base model, which is configured with 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of built-in storage, expandable via micro SD card. There's also a version of the phone with 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. So you can choose between the ones that you need. Even the base model with 4 gigs of RAM, I think, will be more than sufficient for most people in terms of multitasking and gameplay as well as web browsing. So now it's going to ask us to choose a theme. Let's just choose the default one here. Immediately we can tell that the panel here has extremely impressive contrast between the colors in terms of the black in the background and of course the text. And that's because, again, it's using an AMOLED panel, which again has the benefit of being very punchy in terms of its color and saturation. Furthermore, the nice thing about AMOLED is basically if everything is black in the background, it does use less power. So you can essentially save on power just by changing and having as few pixels light up as possible, which is a pretty interesting trick. Otherwise, the curved screen, although it's not quite as noticeable as something like the Note 7, where the screen goes 100% to the edges, on here it still is kind of noticeable. You can already tell that some of the text is essentially falling off from the corners of the phone, and as a result, it gives you a few more options in terms of the settings to play around with using these side bezels. We are now fully loaded into the standard MIUI 8.0, and you can see that it's a pretty clean install in terms of what we've come to expect from Xiaomi. Of course, it's quite different from a vanilla build of Android, but overall it works quite well, and I think even first-time smartphone users won't have any issues in terms of navigating around. There isn't a consolidated or a universal app drawer at the bottom. Instead, you have unlimited pages to customize with your favorite apps and programs, kind of similar to iOS. Next to the home key / fingerprint scanner, there's also 2 capacitive keys which you can reprogram or remap the order in order to do things like multitasking, as well as bring up menu settings. And of course, I can also long hold on the home key to access Google Now for AI as well as assisted voice searching. Otherwise, the screen here seems extremely sensitive on first impressions, and in terms of brightness, you can see that it definitely gets bright enough as well to still see when there is kind of light reflecting on it. So that's nice, of course. But again, kind of expected on a flagship level device. So that's more or less it for now. We'll be doing a lot more testing and come out with a more complete review soon, but again, this has been our unboxing and first impressions look at the Xiaomi Mi Note 2.